Hello dear friends, Igor Gorky on V-Country channel, and this is the fourth video release, and in this video release I want to speak about the possible probable scenarios of the development of the global crisis affected by the Russian aggression in Ukraine. And to before analyzing these scenarios, I would like to resume the conclusions which were made in previous three video releases so that they will help to move forward. And in the first video release, we spoke actually about the development of industrial and social technologies and discovered that they have different speed of development during the last several centuries. We can see that just the most advanced social technology, which is actually the basement of the democracy, the separation of powers. It was announced in 1748 by a French enlightener, Charles-Louis de Montesquieu, in his treatise on social philosophy called About the Spirit of Laws, which was published in Geneva, Switzerland. And so it is, just the age of the invention of a steam engine. So in other words, the most advanced and the most modern social technology is the age of a steam engine. Then we also found out that only 6.4% of the world population are living in a full-fledged democracy. So it means that the rest, 93.6%, they still living in pre-democratic social systems. And it means that this 93.6% of the world population are living in the age of, if to compare with the industrial technologies, in the age of industrial technologies before the steam engine was invented. Also, we found out that probably the reason for such disproportion in the speed of development of industrial and social technologies is the fact that industrial technologies are mostly developed under the conditions of a free market or just a market. And the social technologies, they are developed under the pretty rigid monopoly of the government. That's why the development of social technologies is pretty much conservated and abstracted. Then there is another problem, that the development of industrial technologies is pretty much tracked by the social environment, which is produced by the social technologies. And so we can find out that industrial technologies are developed not only in direction of, just to satisfy the benefits of population in different fields, but also in the direction to improve the technologies of internal repressions and external aggression, the technology of mutual destruction of the population. Then if to consider that the development of social technologies are archaic and pretty much conserved, they actually, like right now, at the stage of a social paradigm which allows the domination of one social group over others, and thus the social conflicts gets created in this way, in this condition. So it means that if we have the situation when the social conflicts are still generated by the social system and the social technologies, and the industrial technologies are developing only in the way of improving the tools of repression and tools of aggression, so then the civilization can come to a point when people will destroy themselves after the advanced weapons will be created so that they can be resulted in such a consequence. This is the resume, the conclusions of the first video. In the second video, we try to understand also the basic, the track of the development of the contemporary civilization. And we found out that the countries on the globe can be divided basically in two different types, autocracies and democracies. And we can find that autocracies, they're mostly based on the force of power, restriction of freedoms and liberties, monopoly control, and the way of its development is an extensive control over the resources, over the territories, over peoples. That's why the authoritarian countries, they actually they pretty often of aggressive behavior towards the other countries as well. Then we can find out that democracies, the democratic system, have an algorithm which also have some dysfunctions. And we found these dysfunctions in the fact of disintegration of current and long-term interests by the means of domination of current interests over long-term interests, and disintegration of economic and social interests by the means of domination of economic interests over social interests. Basically, it works in the way that when people elect during the electoral cycles the representative power, then they vote for those who promise the momentary benefits from their power. And that's why those politicians who are promising currently satisfy the basic needs of the population, they win the elections, and that's why the whole system is mostly concentrated on fulfillment of current promises and current interests of the population. As about economic and social interests, then the democracies are organized in the way of free market economy, where businesses are chasing profits despite the social consequences could follow, the results of these business activities. So then we can see that these, just features of behavior of autocracies and democracies bring them both to a kind of symbiosis, when autocracies and democracies, they live together, and there is a cooperation, just a mutual interconnection. And the reason for that is that the seek of democracies for momentary profits and benefits makes them move towards the economic collaborationism with autocracies as they stream also to make profits using the resources which are controlled by autocracies. And democracies, as they are oriented mostly very much on intensive factors of the development, so they can use the resources of authoritarian countries much more effectively than authoritarian countries can do themselves. So that's then the mutual interests of autocracies and democracies appears, and the phenomenon of economic collaborationism gets generated. Then the consequence of this symbiosis is that democracies pump up the potential, the economic potential, the military potential, the political potential of autocracies by investments and transmission of technologies from democratic countries to to autocracies. Then, as far as autocracies, they also have their own algorithm of behavior when they get pretty critical potential for their development, and when they stream to expand their control over the resources outside their countries, then they resort to external aggressions. And this aggression one day becomes to possess an existential threat for democracies. When democracies face the existential threat in like uh, uh, as a current threat, when it moves from the rank of long-term threats to current threats, then democracies start to defend. And that's the way the regional and global conflicts appear. And so, I mean, just that's the way the cycle of this symbiosis does work. I mean, it starts with the economic collaborationism between democracies and autocracies, and then it ends by the conflict, military conflict as well. And then this cycle repeats. So now we can see how the conflicts and wars are getting generated in the system of the world we have for now. This is the conclusion of the second video. Then, in our third video, we analyze the situation, the root causes which drove the world to the global crisis we have right now because of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. And we found out that Russian Federation is an empire in a half-life after disintegration of the Russian Empire started in 1917. And we can see that the imperialistic uh, formula of the Russian state, it started to develop in 1478, when the Great Duchy of Moscow finally occupied and plundered Novgorod Republic, and the Russian state appeared, the further development of which was consistent wars, uh, territorial conquests of peoples living on these territories. So we can see that this imperialistic trend in the development of Russia, it lasts from 1478 to 2022. So total it is 544 years. And then the problem had appeared, I mean, just because of such long-term development of the imperialistic trend in the country. We can see that a large part of population of Russia, they, um, I mean, just the fails associative relationship in the worldview of a big portion of population between their own wealth, between their own wealth, imperialistic dictatorship, and conquest of territories and of peoples have been formed through this period of time. It works in the way that uh, they understand, due to their worldview, that as more rigid imperialistic dictatorship, as more external conquests are taking place, as better the big part of the population live. Uh, Also, another, I mean, just problem had been developed, and the matter of this problem is that, I mean, uh, during the that because of the conditions of absolutism, of power, of restriction, of freedoms and liberties, there is not big opportunities for a person to develop successfully. So if to uh, self-identify, if to look at yourself from the point of your personal achievements, then a lot of people can find out that it's meaningless. And so that's why uh, this kind of negative self-identification got compensated by another kind of self-identification. When people started to self-identify themselves, not as an individuals, but as a part of a big collective, of a big country, which um, participate always in wars, which is consistent victory in these wars, and like they conquer territories and peoples, and this fact is like a kind of proof that they have the right for superiority and for kind of national exclusivity. So these two defects of a fails associative relationship in the worldview of a large portion of population and of this type of self-identification affected uh, psychopathic problems, which I would probably identify like psychopathic imperialism. If to be more correct from the point of medicine, then as far as I know, there are like four types of psychopathic pathology, and they are destruction, sadism, masochism, and conform. So imperialistic psychopathic pathology is a kind of a psychopathic conform. Uh, and then, so we need somehow to, and then, I mean, just this psychopathic conform disease, it's spread like an epidemic in Russia. So, in order to correct the situation with the reproduction of this kind of psychopathic pathology in a format of an epidemic, then it is necessary to change the condition for the people so that they will start thinking differently when they will start to establish correct associative relations in their worldview. um, I mean, just which will show them what is the real dependence between their own well-being, their wealth, and that it is affected, first of all, by their own creative and productive labor, and that they will start identifying themselves like a whole persons, but not like a part in a big mechanism of occupations and aggressions. And the only way to do it is to finish with the imperialistic format of Russia, to make it disintegrate finally, when Russia will transfer into a number of countries, no one of which will be able to dominate over each other and to pretend to be a successor of the empire. And as I mean, just as my opinion, I told that the best way probably will be to give the self-determination to the sub-ethnical group of Russia. And basically, I noticed that those sub-ethnical groups are Russian, Mongolian, Turkic, and Finnish Ugric sub-ethnic groups. And so self-determination, the right for the self-determination and foundation of their own independent countries probably will be the best solution to finish with the imperialistic disease in the Russia, I mean, just as it looks for now. So this was the third conclusion. And then let us try to see which scenarios of the future development of this conflict we can predict. I would tell that there are like three scenarios of development of this global crisis. So number one, I will call the first one, I will call as a degenerative scenario, as it assumes that at the end, the whole civilization will find itself at the more more degenerated condition. This scenario is possible if the disintegration of current and long-term interests, economic and social interests in democratic countries will reach a critical level. I mean that, for instance, being affected by the economical problems, the reason of which is, just like the sanctions against Russia and the support of Ukraine and all these consequences of this global crisis. So then one day the population of democratic countries can elect those politicians who will decide to stop the support of Ukraine and uh, like to give up on the Russian aggression. Then it will mean that uh, Ukraine will lose a lot of resources for effective resistance against aggression with unpredicted consequences. And then maybe the new world order will be established based on a cult of force. Finally, it will bring the whole civilization to a set of regional and global conflicts which can end the history of the civilization uh, as a result of a mutual destruction of mankind. This scenario is, it's not a high likely. Why? Because right now, the threats of Russia, the threat of application of a nuclear weapon, the threat of uh, to block the supply of natural resources. Just recently happened some actions against the infrastructure of pipelines in the Baltic Sea and so on. So they like make the threat of Russia against the Western world uh, more uh, obvious, and it moves from the rank of long-term threats to current threats. And so when it moved to a current threat, though even if the Western democracies will have to consider the situation from their current interests and considering current threats, they will still have to support Ukraine and resist Russia. So that's why this probability, I hope, goes to close to a zero. The second scenario is when Western countries, Western democracies, will support Ukraine until it will reoccupy uh, part of territories or all territories which had been occupied by Russia before. And then the support will be ended because of the formal reason that there is no any more occupation. Uh, this scenario is pretty much uh, likely because uh, that's the way the current system of international security does work. As we know, the current system of international security was founded after the First World War as a result of the First World War by the formation of League of Nations, which the task of which was to secure the world from future wars. At the same time, we also can see one more problem in the algorithm of democratic countries. We can see the disintegration over procedurial form and functional content, where the form dominates over the functional content. So this problem had been pretty much reflected in the work of the League of Nations, because all these goals to provide the international security were mostly formal, and they were not maintained by the uh, functional tools. So we know that the League of Nations was not capable to prevent the Second World War, and it de facto disappeared right at the eve of the Second World War, and de jure it disappeared right after the Second World War. Then the United Nations replaced the League of Nations. United Nations is a more complex structure, and it covers right now the whole world, as almost of the world countries are the members of the United Nations, and plus it works in multilateral uh, interconnection with different profile international organizations with different goals, so that the whole system can influence financially, economically on different world processes. So then we can see that the United Nations, it is not only formal organization like League of Nations, because League of Nations was mostly a club, international club for the key countries of the world. Uh, and the United Nations, it's more structurized. They have different functions, so it's more functional than the League of Nations. But we can see that the United Nations was incapable to prevent the crisis because of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. We can see that it didn't. It had a lot of failures through the history of its existence to prevent different conflicts around the world. So it means that it's still pretty much formal, and the functional content of the United Nations is pretty much limited. It's limited by the financial economic influence, sometimes maybe by peacekeepers, which are not capable uh, to resist real aggressions. That's why it's still pretty much formal organization, which is basically disabled to establish a lasting peace, a lasting international security in the world. We can pay attention also to a block of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, because NATO have pretty good military potential to resist any aggression in the world, any regional or global conflicts. But we can see that NATO organization is formed by democracies with their own algorithm of behavior. And so they have the military potential, but democracies are not capable to make decisions to imply the military potential to neutralize the threats of aggression or even to prevent the aggression. We can see by the, I mean, just if to analyze the conflict in Ukraine, we can see that the maximum NATO is capable to do is to support Ukraine, to help them to resist the aggression already after the aggression did happen. And we can see also that this support is pretty much limited. And that's why Ukraine have to face a lot of damages, destructions on their territory, and a lot of human victims on their territory. In other words, we can see that NATO, although potentially they have functional potential to resist, but the algorithm of the work of this organization makes it incapable to resolve this kind of issues of international security and uh, peace. Uh, so, I mean, just as far as we have this standard, this current standard of the international security, probably uh, the support of Ukraine can be ended when the Ukrainian troops will reoccupy most part or all territory of Ukraine. But so, what will be the problem? The problem will be that the source of the problem will not be resolved because aggressor will still remain. I mean, the imperialistic spirit of the Russian Federation. It means that one day Russian Federation will restore its military economic potential, and then it can uh, resort to other to the next occupations, aggressions, and so on. And so then, I mean, just all the development of the world can be recycled to in the same track. I mean, just we'll face again regional and global conflicts, wars, and then I mean, just there is still a probability that the mankind will be destroyed. This is basically, I think, the most likely, the most probable scenario of the resolve of this crisis. But also, I have to this scenario I will call like health degenerative or semi-dimensional. The third scenario of the development because of this global conflict I would call progressive. There is also a probability for this kind of development, and I think that it can work in the following way. It can work in the way that right now it's pretty much obvious for uh, everybody who is capable to analyze and to rethink the whole situation, that the only one way to establish lasting peace and security in the world for the future is to create, to develop functional international institutions which will be capable from all points to neutralize any threat of aggression at the stage when the first pulses, first trends of generating such an aggressive a source of aggression will appear. If not, then to resist the aggression at full-fledged, if just it will have to occur. Also, I think that there should be a different principle of international security. I think that the security should be expanded not only for those peoples who have their sovereignty right now and those who have recognized borders, international recognized borders. I think it should be expanded also for those peoples who are still colonized, but those who are on the way to get their independence. Because if to make it in a different way, it will mean that some uh, imperialistic or uh, authoritarian governments will still have the right to practice the wars inside their countries against the peoples who are living on their territory, and it will mean a regional military conflict inside the country, which will have the potential to expand, to develop to a more wide conflict of a regional or global scale. So that's my basic opinion about that. And right now, the most interested in creation of such international institutions is Ukraine, because they are facing the threat of the existential threat for them. Uh, just as being realized. We also can know that some other countries, the victims of the Russian aggression, they also face such kind of problems. We can see also some countries which face that the Russian aggression can be occurred against them as well. So then, just we can conclude that Ukraine is of core interest to initiate the development of such an international structure. And we understand that a lot of international community will be still uh, uh, deaf and dumb to this problem. Probably they will not support this idea. But so there is a number of countries which are pretty much concerned about this threat. And first of all, there are those who are from Eastern Europe and the countries of the former Soviet Union. Probably Ukraine can initiate to form the initial bloc consisting of those countries, which will become a precedent for the development of a new level, of a new kind of international security, which, in case of its further development, probably can expand, develop, and include other countries of the world. And then one day the new type, the new stage in the development of the quality of international security will get developed or get realized. So uh, then it means that developing these structures uh, and practicing such kind of approach towards the threat of aggression, it means that the deoccupation of Ukrainian territories will be taken not as a final solution of the problem, and that the final solution of the problem is to neutralize the mechanism of generation of aggressive potential inside Russia. And as I told, probably it is to affect the development of Russia in the way of its of decolonization of peoples of Russia and foundation of a set of new countries, no one which will dominate over each other. And so then the lasting peace probably can be established on the territory of the former Soviet Union the same way like it was established in Europe after the Second World War. Uh, so, I mean, just I covered all these three scenarios of the development. And then I think also that it is important to maybe stress or to put attention that right now Ukraine is in a very important situation because there is a place where the global crisis takes place. And uh, that's why it's the objectively the global political process moves inside Ukraine, and Kiev, Ukraine, probably uh, is becoming one of the center of political decisions, and that's why I think right now the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian civil society, and the Ukrainian academic community have to pay attention to the third scenario, the development, because too much right now depends on them. They are in a they have pretty good advantage right now because they are like in kind of a some kind of a leadership in the global political process, and that's why probably they have to be active. Uh, I mean, just in the way to establish active tools. I mean, just active security tools, so that the security have to be active but not passive, as it was until today, as it is until today. So then I think that attention should be paid as to creating of international structures as well as it should be I mean just the 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 activities, civil activities and academic activities in the direction of supporting the discussions, researches, developments, uh, I mean discussions and researches in the way of creating development, incubation, testing of new social technologies that will finally will recode the current civilization and will be capable to bring it to the lasting peace and uh, just international security based on a full-fledged personal liberties and social harmony. Uh, I believe that's basically the conclusion of this video release, and I thank you for your attention, and I tell you goodbye, and we'll see you in my next video releases. Thank you.